Yo soy José Luis Zimmerman, director de Digital, y bueno, tenemos el placer de organizar este evento para vosotros, este día de hoy y el día de mañana. El día de hoy, como sabéis, de puertas abiertas, y el día de mañana lo que es la conferencia, propiamente dicha, lo que es European E-Commerce Conference, que es un evento que llevamos haciendo pues 6 años ya, ¿no? A continuación lo que vais a ver es, bueno, vamos a tener la oportunidad de entrevistar, de charlar, de hablar con dos personas muy relevantes que también estarán mañana en el evento, en la conferencia central. Y, por último, una oportunidad mayor, diría, no por los ponentes, sino porque no va a estar mañana, de escuchar uno de los proyectos pues, más interesantes que ha habido en comercio electrónico en los últimos años, Etsy, que viene única y exclusivamente para hablar hoy en este foro. Para ello, para las dos primeras intervenciones, para las entrevistas, contamos con Joshua Novik, que está a mi izquierda. Joshua es el CEO y fundador de Antevenio, una de las principales compañías de marketing online de España, que también es una compañía internacionalizada, que también es una compañía que lleva muchos años en el sector de Internet y que, bueno, tiene un expertise y un bagaje a nivel personal y a nivel profesional muy importante, ¿no? Y por eso le hemos pedido que fuese él quien liderase estas entrevistas.
Y que habla inglés.
Y que hablas inglés. Esta también es una... Sin más, os dejo con Joshua, que es quien va a hablar con estas dos personas y quien va a introducir la sesión, y espero que lo disfrutéis. Muchas gracias.
Bueno, gracias. El primer...
Uri.
Vale, a pesar que iba a subir. El primer ponente es Uri Levine y él es el presidente y co-fundador de Waze, que es una compañía israelí que se dedica de alguna forma a solucionar los problemas de los conductores dentro del tráfico a través de un GPS que de alguna forma te explica dónde está el tráfico. Y está hecho a través de una red social. Entonces, con Uri mañana va a presentar un poquito más su compañía. Sin embargo, hoy lo que queremos un poco es preguntarle sobre el ecosistema de Israel y por qué hay tantas compañías, siendo un país tan pequeño, con poco más de 7 millones de habitantes, porque es un país tan exitoso en nuevas tecnologías. Uri. Thank you very much.
You know, the most scary thing was seeing the picture over there, which is maybe 3 or 4 years old. And I look much better at the picture than I am in reality. So maybe you should put the picture back there.
Okay. Well, again, thanks a lot. We'll move into English. Thanks a lot for coming here today. It's a real pleasure having you. And also it'll be a real pleasure listening to your presentation tomorrow. Maybe you can just very briefly explain, what your company does and what's the, fundamental, basically how it helps people and how it's really, made something a necessity, something social.
So, Waze is a social network of drivers that all the drivers are connecting together in real time, and they provide each other with the information about what's going on the roadways and traffic jams and so forth. So essentially, we are creating a new ecosystem that provides the information by the drivers and for the drivers. In Spanish, red social de conductores para conductores. So, it's by the drivers, for the drivers, help us to fight traffic jams.
Oh, okay, great. And how many people use the system now, and how many people are actually contributing?
So, obviously in anything that is based on network effect, as soon as you reach critical mass, everything changes, the game changes. Today we have 29 million drivers worldwide, and there are many countries that we have reached critical mass, and in those countries, obviously the service is much better than it is in other places. In Spain, not yet, but definitely on the right path to get there. So we have about 600,000 or 700,000 users here, and it's increasing day after day.
That's really impressive numbers. Can you maybe explain a little more about how the company was born and how it was financed initially, and basically what were the kind of the issues when it came to financing at the start, if you had any?
So two things. One, in the history of when we started Waze, it was actually started by our CTO, one of the founders. We are three founders. He ran into a situation that the local map provider in Israel didn't allow him to use the map, and he basically said, okay, can I use the crowd to build the map for us? He built the first version of the application that was running on a PDA and enabling the crowd to create the map information for us. So not just traffic, but actually the entire map was created by the community. And then we teamed up and we basically say, let's do that in real time. Let's use the beginning of the smartphones penetration. So at the time it was Nokia E71 and Nokia E95 that were the first smartphones that were available in Israel, and we built the first version on that. Our approach was that if we can use the crowd to build the maps, and at the same time map creation is very complex and it's led by mega billions of dollars companies like Navteq and TeleAtlas at the time, then we have a disruptive opportunity here, and similar to what Wikipedia did to Britannica. And we went fundraising, looking for quite a lot of funds. So initially we raised $12 million in Israel from 3 different VCs. It's always hard. If you are a startup company that you're looking to raise funds, it's always hard. It's always harder than you think it is. It always takes longer. And it took us a long period of time until we raised the initial funds, and then we started running.
And when you raised the initial round was 12 million euros or dollars. And you raised it. Was it like already a prototype of the product, or it was kind of basically a PowerPoint presentation?
So it was a proof of concept in Israel that the community can actually generate the map data. A very funny story from the early days. We were going into partners meeting with one of the VCs, and we expect all the partners to be there, and we know that this is the decision event. And before the event, we figure out where each one of the partners is actually living and made sure that their houses is on the map. And during our presentation, one of them is asking, so what you're telling me is that it's possible that my street or my house is on the map? And we say, maybe, we don't know, right? And obviously, we checked that out. It was on the map, and that was the compelling event for that particular venture capitals to put their funds in. We had a working prototype. It's fundamental in the sense that your investors are users as well. So think of them as such, because this is the first way that they're going to make their judgment.
How many rounds of financing you went through?
So that was the A round. We have done another round in 2010, and then another one last year that was led by Kleiner Perkins and Horizons from Hong Kong.
Did you have any, let's say, government funding or any, grants or loans, or was there any?
On the first year, we had, so Israel, there is the Chief Scientist Organization in Israel that is supporting, in general, the high-tech industry, but also many startups. And so in the first year, we took some grants from that. Later on, we didn't take any more from that.
And I think a lot of us are curious. How come was basically explaining that before is, why are there so many successful Israeli, technology companies, considering it's such a small country? What's really leading all this innovation? Is it? Obviously, I'm sure there are a lot of talented people, but there must be also something to do with the ecosystem. What is the ecosystem which makes it, such a successful country in technology?
So I think that there are 3 things in the Israeli ecosystem that makes us so significant in startups. So, you know, there is a Silicon Valley, and in Israel we have Silicon Alley, which is a small scale. But when you're looking at VC funding, for example, then Israel has more funding than many other major countries, so more than you know, Germany or Spain or UK or large countries that could be 10 times larger than Israel. And there are a few things that made Israel so strong in its culture and in the DNA of the people in startups. One of them is the fact that we all serve in the army. And you know, when you are surrounded by enemies, and the army is a place that everyone goes there, and it's a matter of if you're not successful, then you're dead. That's it. Very simple. So survivalship is one thing, and then the other thing that I think is significant is the fact that we are a small place. Yeah, and small place is much less formal, and if it's less formal, then you can challenge pretty much everything. Nothing that someone says is taken for granted. And you know, if this is how we do things, then maybe we can find another way to do things. And because of that, the creativity and the strive for survivalship creates a very good infrastructure for, or you know, environment for startups to become significant. And the last element is the funding that is widely available in Israel from government funds on one hand, and a lot of VCs that have you know, offices in Israel, not just Israeli VCs, but also large, mainly American, but also some European VCs that have representative or offices in Israel.
I mean, and how does the government funding work? I mean, I mean, what do you think are the policies which have, you know, made, you know, basically...
I was never able to figure that out. I know that every time that I apply to any sort of funding, and it doesn't matter if it was a startup company or a mid-sized company or a large company, I got funded. So I never was able to figure out the mechanism.
I mean, I was actually more asking about, how does it work? I mean, in a sense, what's, you know, is the government funding the VCs? Is it funding directly the companies?
So they are directly funding the companies, and in a model that is, you know, risk-free for the company. And essentially, if the development is successful, then you pay royalties back to the government. But if the development or the project is not successful, then it's turns out to be a grant, and then, you know, it reduces the risk level that companies have in different stages of new development.
And how do they choose what companies? I guess one of the big issues always with governments is kind of the feeling that maybe they don't have the know-how or understanding to, you know, basically decide where they're going to give the funding. I mean, do they do that because they co-invest, or they actually have, you know, some really, you know, good, you know, people who really have an expertise and are able to evaluate where to invest, you know, intelligently this money?
So I think that they are, in general, they co-invest. So they are not giving funding. They are not providing funding to companies that have no funds, but they provide additional funding on top of that. And they also have very good people there.
That's wonderful. Just one last question, because what's your feeling? I mean, from Israel, what's your view of Spain? You know, one, as a market and as an opportunity, and secondly, if you have a feeling of what, you know, Spain is in digital. I mean, I don't know if you know Spanish companies, or you have a feeling that it's a country which is, you know, very involved in technology, or is kind of like this feeling like, you know, basically two questions in one.
So, you know, when you're a small startup out of Israel and you are looking at the rest of the world, and obviously the U.S. market always turns out to be the most significant and lucrative market. And then when you're starting to look at Europe, you know, at the beginning you see Europe, and then you're starting to break that down, and turns out that in many cases Spain is a very, very important market for Israeli startups. Maybe it is under-discovered by large companies from the US, or that are coming here just after they're going to the UK and Germany and larger markets. And so it's becoming more bigger opportunity or relatively bigger opportunity for startup companies. And so we see Spain as an important market and also as perhaps a bridge to go into Latin American markets.
And what do you, you think it makes any sense for Spanish companies to open in Israel? I mean, you think it's an opportunity for Spanish, for example, startups in Israel, or you think it's a market where we could, find some opportunities?
So I think that collaboration-wise, definitely yes. Israel is a small market. There are only 7 million people in Israel. So, if you are already established company here in Spain, and you're looking to increase your market size, then it seems like moving into France or Italy is going to be much more attractive as a market than Israel. But cooperations and opportunities, in particular with technology companies, is probably going to be very significant with Israeli companies.
Okay. That's very interesting. Okay, thank you very much, and we really appreciate having you here, and obviously we'll be very interested in listening to you tomorrow.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Okay.